would Sarah Boone be going, potentially? And I think I found out. It looks like she could be going to Lowell Correctional Institute, and this place has a really, really dark history, guys. Warden ignored staff of female inmates, prisoner allegations. Florida promptly promoted him. A Lowell Correctional Institution, this is from 2022. Systematic rape of female inmates by male guards has been documented over the years by the Miami Herald and drawn a sharp rebuke by the Justice Department. A newly filed lawsuit says the sexual abuse is pervasive as ever. And wait till we get to this lawsuit, guys. The inmate lawsuit dated September 1st, inciting a litany of specific incidents, targets Stephen Rostier, Lowell's warden, as a defendant. It does not claim he engaged in sexual misconduct, but that he exhibited deliberate indifference to a widespread pattern of sexual and physical abuse. This week, 12 days after the lawsuit was filed, the Florida Department of Corrections gave the warden a new, higher echelon job. He got promoted. Michelle Glady, the prison system's director of communications, underlined the word promotion in an email to the Herald, confirming Rostier's newly announced role as assistant regional director of programs. Glady said at the moment he still functions at the prison near Ocala. The department did not immediately provide a comment from Rostiera, whose warden salary is slightly more than $100,000. In addition to citing, the lawsuit names the Department of Corrections as the defendant, filed by a former Lowell inmate since transferred to another prison in Homestead. It seeks in excess of $75,000 in damages, saying she was sexually abused by a Lowell corrections officer. Only the officer's last name is cited in the filing. The inmate, serving a sentence in Palm Beach County for charges related to drugs and car theft, alleges she was attacked in an area of the prison with no surveillance camera coverage, and was threatened with death if she complained. The plaintiff's sentence ends in 2023. So she is moved. So I've got this here, the investigation of the Lowell Correctional Institution, Florida Department of Corrections. Lowell prisoners have suffered serious harm from staff sexual abuse and the substantial risk of serious harm. Sexual abuse of women prisoners by Lowell corrections officers and staff is severe and prevalent throughout the prison. In the course of our investigation, the department and its expert reviewed 100% of investigation files produced by the FDOC of reports of sexual abuse and sexual harassment of Lowell prisoners over several years, including 161 investigations of staff on prisoner allegations from 2015 through 2019. And as you notice, the list that I pulled up of women prisoners that have died only goes back to 2015. What was going on before then? Of the 161 sexual misconduct investigations and complaints, our expert reviewed 8 were closed by arrest of the officer. In several cases, officers resigned in lieu of separation for cause or resigned while under investigation for sexual misconduct. More than 24 more officers were dismissed due to agency policy, or for committing felony or misdemeanor perjury, or for making false statements. Dozens more contained detailed, credible allegations of sexual abuse. In total, we identified a sufficient number of incidents of sexual abuse to provide compelling evidence in support of its conclusion that there is reasonable cause to believe there is a pattern and practice of sexual abuse at Lowell. This pattern and practice conclusion is bolstered by evidence of pervasive sexual harassment. Incidents of staff sexual abuse of prisoners at Lowell are varied and disturbing. Some staff abused prisoners through unwanted and coerced sexual contact, including sexual penetration and groping. Prisoners were forced or coerced to perform fellatio on or touch the intimate body parts of staff. In other instances, staff demanded that prisoners undress in front of them, sometimes in exchange for basic necessities such as toilet paper. Many prisoners reported that staff watched them while they shower or use the toilet with no penological justification. Lowell has a long history of tolerance for sexual abuse and harassment, which continues to present to the present. In interviews with the department, prisoners spoke of sex between staff and prisoners as a regular event, suggesting a normalization of sexual abuse by staff. Some current and former staff made similar representations. The incident of sexual abuse follow similar patterns where officers and staff sexually abuse women who are vulnerable to sexual victimization and fear retaliation, violence, deprivation of privileges, what we were just talking about, or endure sexual abuse in exchange for food, medication, or contraband in violation of the prisoner's constitutional rights. Prisoners who report sexual abuse often are placed in confinement pending investigation, and it is common for staff to threaten prisoners who report abuse with retaliation, including placement in confinement. It is particularly disturbing that supervisors are among the repeat perpetrators of sexual abuse at Lowell. Not only does this misconduct set a poor example for line staff, but it also results in fewer checks and balances to detect and prevent abuse throughout the staff. In some cases, abuse allegations were channeled through alleged abusers who were tasked with writing up incident reports on behalf of alleged victims. And we're going to go through some of those. Several Lowell officers and other staff have faced criminal charges based on allegations of sexual abuse of prisoners. For example, in July 2020, a corrections officer was arrested after he admitted to engaging in oral sex with a prisoner in a dormitory maintenance room at Lowell. The prisoner alleged she and the officer had also had sexual intercourse. The officer was charged with 1 count of sexual misconduct. The officer was credibly accused of sexual abuse previously, but had remained employed at Lowell and in close contact with prisoners. This is a repeated thing that seems to be happening all the time in prisons and law enforcement in general across the country. But in this type of position, are you that hard up for getting new employees? Like, I think these are usually lower paying jobs. Sarah Boone is headed here, I believe, folks. In February 2017, this officer allegedly handcuffed a prisoner, groped her vagina and breast, placed her in confinement, and withheld hygiene products from her after she refused to go to the usual place to perform oral sex on the officer, as she had on multiple previous occasions over the previous 2.5 months. The prisoner also alleged that he had provided her with contraband, including nail polish, lip gloss, and small pinches of snuff in exchange for oral sex. A medical exam noted that the prisoner had 2 lesions on her throat, she said resulted from performing oral sex on the officer. OIG opened an investigation into these allegations, but did not interview the officer. What? And never completed the investigation. The officer remained employed at Lowell until he was arrested based on the new allegations 3 years later. In September of 2019, a trainee corrections officer was sentenced to 2 years in prison after he pleaded guilty to sexual misconduct with a prisoner, a felony under Florida law. The prisoner alleged that on two separate occasions in September 2018, the officer who was assigned to her housing unit woke up in the middle of the night along with prisoners who were being escorted to the pill line outside the dormitory. The officer then walked her to a bathroom where she had sexual intercourse with him in exchange for Suboxone, a prescription drug used to treat opioid withdrawal. The officer was dismissed for cause in September of 2018. Seems like this is just a daily epidemic that is, I don't know how it would be unmanageable. You have to do some kind of investigation and, actually look into what the fuck's going on. What are we doing here? I don't know how often I read stories like this, and it leaves me scratching my head with what's actually going on behind the scenes and how so much could just go unchecked for so long. In February 2020, a former Lowell officer trainee turned himself into the Marion County Sheriff's Office on charges of 2 counts of sexual misconduct with a prisoner. Forensic evidence from the prisoner identified the officer's DNA on the prisoner's shirt, which she reported was caused when he ejaculated during one of their sexual encounters. The prisoner reported that the officer demanded that she perform oral sex on him on 2 occasions in August of 2018, and she complied because she was panicked and scared. According to an anonymous grievance, this prisoner also was helping the officer distribute contraband around the prison, and another prisoner allegedly also helped him distribute contraband around the same time. She feared she was pregnant by the officer. That shit's gotta happen too. Are you kidding me? In September 2018, the officer was dismissed after contraband was found in his vehicle, and he admitted to attempting to introduce contraband into the prison. OIG's investigation into allegations that this officer repeatedly coerced a prisoner to perform oral sex on him remained open for almost a year and a half following his dismissal. It was eventually closed in February of 2020 due to the officer's arrest. Is this insane? A Lowell lieutenant was accused repeatedly of sexually abusing multiple prisoners at Lowell over several years, but remained in his position until 2019, when he was arrested for sexually molesting 2 minor girls in the community. FDOC did not respond adequately to previous allegations against this lieutenant. And remember, we said this place houses people as young as 14 years old. Results in his remaining in close contact with and able to harm prisoners for several years. In 2019, another prisoner alleged that between March and April 2018, he had sexual intercourse with this lieutenant twice in a Lowell annex dormitory in exchange for favors from him. This prisoner was transferred to another institute for her own safety. In 2018, another prisoner filed a third-party grievance accusing this lieutenant of receiving oral sex from another prisoner, and after a report was made calling the prisoner who made the report I don't know what Brea means, B-R-E-A, bitch, and told him to suck a dick. In 2017, the same lieutenant was accused of sexually attacking another prisoner who alleged he groped her buttocks and made comments that her butt is soft. The prisoner was transferred, but the lieutenant remained on duty, supervising prisoners at Lowell. At least 2 of these cases remained open as of November 2019, with no investigative findings on record. In addition to being a repeat sexual predator, this lieutenant also was credibly accused of unjustified use of force against a Lowell prisoner. In August of 2019, he was accused of brutally beating and handcuffed a prisoner and leaving her a quadriplegic. In August of 2020, FDOC suffered the lawsuit related to the prisoner's paralysis for $4.65 million. This actually sounds like one of those 80s women in prison movies, like those horrible movies that are just sexual abuse and beatings, and they make them fight each other and just the wildest shit. As part of that case, a former prisoner who recently had been released from Lowell testified under oath that this lieutenant threatened to put you under investigation and take your gain time if you did not take care of him, which the prisoner understood to mean oral or regular sex. The prisoner testified that some of the girls were so desperate to not lose their gain time, they would have sexual intercourse with the lieutenant. In February 2017, a Lowell Corrections sergeant was arrested and charged with sexual misconduct involving a prisoner and terminated from employment. After another officer witnessed the sergeant kissing a prisoner in July of 2016, the prisoner told investigators that she had sexual intercourse with the sergeant on multiple occasions, and forensic testing ultimately revealed the sergeant's DNA on the prisoner's pants. Another officer investigated the scene and found a letter between the prisoner and staff confirming an inappropriate relationship. Despite the strong forensic and circumstantial evidence of sexual abuse, the charge was dropped because the victim's refusal to cooperate precluded the state from proving sexual penetration as the charging statute requires. However, the sergeant's termination stood for violating the FDOC moral character standards. Come on. Oh, we got more. Food service coordinator at Lowell Correctional Institute was arrested on September 18, 2019 on suspicion of sexual battery on a prisoner. A charge with 1 count of battery, although the charge was subsequently dropped. This alleged battery was corroborated by surveillance video, which showed the staff member waited until no one was in the immediate area, then rubs/grabs the prisoner's buttocks while she is still cleaning. The complaining witness was cleaning the kitchen area of the prison in the middle of the day when the food service coordinator grabbed the prisoner's buttocks, which investigators subsequently confirmed in reviewing video evidence. At the time of the staff member's arrest, it was reported that DOC officials were in the process of terminating him. In early 2018, a prisoner alleged that another prisoner had engaged in oral sex with the staff member, but OIG closed that case as unfounded without interviewing the staff member. Many more officers at Lowell's have been investigated for credible accusations of sexual abuse, including forcible rape, sexual acts of exchange for contraband, and other forms of coerced sexual activity. And we're not done. There's more. It literally does not freaking stop. One correction sergeant resigned in 2019 after having been accused of sexual misconduct, violence, and threats against prisoners since 2013, including in at least 10 documented complaints in March of 2017. Lowell's warden at the time wrote in an email that the sergeant would be moved from the female prisoner population because he has had multiple allegations of misconduct, with several being sexual in nature. There have been 10 assigned as IG investigations, with 6 remaining under open investigation and 4 not sustained thus far. While I hesitate to condemn staff solely based on allegations made about inmates and no substantiated cases, the number and trend is certainly concerning. Are you kidding? Really? The complaints against the sergeant included an allegation that he threatened a prisoner with bodily harm and slammed her head into a wall, that he sexually abused prisoners, including touching a prisoner's buttocks, that he had repeatedly propositioned prisoners for sex and sexually harassed prisoners, that he was having sex with a prisoner who was selling cigarettes for him, and that he exchanged cigarettes, pills, and other contraband for sex with prisoners. It's like a little playground for the dudes that run in here and get these fucking jobs. Move up the ladders even, it seems. You get promotions. Several of the specific allegations against the sergeant were disturbing. In early of 2017, a prisoner in the Lowell Annex made repeated allegations that the same sergeant had repeatedly propositioned her for sex, alleging that he asked her on numerous occasions, "When am I going to let him fuck me?" She alleged that she was in fear of the sergeant and a female officer with whom he was also allegedly involved, and she described specific incidents and alleged that he offered her cigarettes in exchange for exposing her naked body. In another 2017 case, a prisoner's aunt contacted Lowell and reported that her niece regularly was having sex with the sergeant and selling cigarettes for other prisoners for him. In March of 2017, due to this pattern of sexual misconduct allegations, including 6 cases that remained open at the time, the warden requested that the sergeant be placed on a no-contact status or transferred to another facility. He was listed on the no inmate contact list in March of 2017 until he resigned 3 years later and briefly was reassigned to a nearby men's facility. However, he remained employed as a sergeant at FDOC, moving between the annex, the main unit, and other facilities until he resigned in March of 2019. Years passed with this bullshit, with this paperwork. All OIG cases against these officers have been closed or suspended with no sustained violations. This is actually insane. April of 2018, a Lowell Corrections officer allegedly raped a prisoner in the outdoor space between 2 buildings. According to the prisoner's written allegation, while she was working in a dormitory in April of 2018, the officer took her to a side of the building between the dorm and the canteen, pushed her down, told her he knew what kind of girl she was, and forced his penis into her mouth. I did what he told me and gave me oral, and he zipped his pants up and took me back to the dormitory. The prisoner repeatedly maintained the details of her allegation. In December of 2018, she reported that she had been harassed by several officers for reporting the abuse. Between 2015 and 2019, one corrections sergeant was the subject of at least 6 investigations into allegations of sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and inappropriate interactions with prisoners, one of which was partially sustained in the OIG investigation. The sergeant repeatedly was placed on the no inmate contact list due to these allegations and was transferred between Lowell assignments in the FDOC men's facility, but returned to the positions directly supervising prisoners at Lowell. During on-site interviews with the department, multiple prisoners accused this sergeant of threatening them with confinement or discipline if they spoke frankly with the department. Administrators placed the sergeant on a no-contact inmate contact status and planned to transfer him. And Lowell's warden informed the sergeant in April of 2019 that permanently resigning him to another facility was the best interest of Lowell Correctional Institution. That same month, the sergeant voluntarily resigned from the FDOC. I think it's the same one we were talking about earlier. Sounds like it. Prior to his voluntary resignation, this sergeant, an admitted sexual harasser who was repeatedly accused of accused of sexual abuse over several years, continued working within FDOC, but failing to implement meaningful corrective actions. FDOC and Lowell officials allowed this sergeant to directly supervise prisoners on and off over several years.